Hello everyone. Today I wanted to talk about something that's been coming up a lot in my client sessions this week. So it might be a thing that's happening in the greater collective. This idea of being a targeted individual. Okay, I'm going to give you my take on being a targeted individual, what I think about that whole thing. I have a lot of thoughts on it. And so I'm going to just share a little bit for folks who may be thinking that they're a targeted individual, what this could mean, what could be the reasoning behind this. So the first thing, let's first talk about what does it mean to be a targeted individual. Somebody who thinks that they're a targeted individual feels like the world is conspiring against them, usually. Usually they feel as though they're being watched. This could happen in a really third dimensional realm. We have a lot of stuff around like police brutality, and that's always been a thing, like way back, even around the times of the civil rights movement and that sort of thing. Like we know that there has been a history, particularly in the Western world, of the police or the powers that be or what have you targeting certain individuals, right? Certain individuals who are going against the status quo, right? And so we can definitely see this in history. We can see this in current events. We can see that a lot of times not everybody gets fair treatment. A lot of times this can be based upon like race, or it can be based upon political opinion if we are looking at targeted individuals from a third dimensional stance. But I'm really not here to talk about this from a third dimensional lens. Anybody who kind of has been following my content knows that I like to take on a little bit more of a multi-dimensional approach as it relates to things. So when I speak of targeted individuals in this live, I'm going to be speaking about it from more of a multi-dimensional approach. So what happens for a lot of folks who are on a spiritual path, who are on an awakening path, who are on an ascension path? What can happen a lot of times is that you start seeing the illusion of things. A lot of the things that you were trained to take stock in, you start seeing that a lot of that was an illusion, right? And as you start waking up to your multidimensionality and your spiritual gifts, your multidimensional gifts, you get perceived differently, right? You start being questioned. Your sanity sometimes starts being questioned. It's just a real thing that happens. If we think about folks who are more spiritually inclined, who are more shamanistically inclined, in our particular society, a lot of folks can be called crazy, right? Like if they see things that other people in the third dimension can't see, if they hear things that other people in the third dimension can't hear, a lot of times they can be labeled as crazy, for lack of a better term. That is starting to shift. That dynamic is starting to shift as we start engaging in more of a collective consciousness shift. We're starting to get more in tune with our spirituality, with our spiritual gifts, what have you. And it's harder and harder to say, oh, it's just all in your head. Even a lot of conspiracy theories that we have been taught to see as not real, light is being shed on that as well. So the veil is being collectively lifted, right? But what happens a lot of times for folks who are awakening is they can start feeling like they're being watched. All right, they can start feeling like they're being targeted. They can start feeling like there's literally a target on their back. Sometimes they can feel like they're being followed. Sometimes they can feel like they're being gang stalked, all of these sorts of things. And I'm actually here to say that first of all, I'm not anybody's experiencing this who tunes into this. I'm really not here to gaslight you in any way or to take away from the experiences that you are having, okay? And I've said the same thing in client sessions and all of that stuff. I really do think that that can appear in people's realities as they're waking up, right? They can start feeling like they're being monitored, that they can't necessarily trust people that are in their close circle, maybe people that they've known like all their lives. All of a sudden they feel as though they can't like trust them and that sort of thing. So I know that that's a real thing, but I will say that as you do a few steps, I'm going to make some recommendations for folks today. As you engage in a few steps, that can become a thing of the past. That could be something that you are easily able to navigate out of and easily able to reclaim your power from. And so I'm going to discuss what those things are. And if you do feel as though you're being targeted or monitored, what are some things that you can do to reclaim your power quite easily, actually? Well, I'm not going to say it's like super easy. It's a process, but it's way easier than feeling like you're being watched every 5 seconds. Okay, so I'll put it like that. So if you feel like you are a targeted individual, it is a program. Okay, so essentially what happens when you wake up from the false matrix, right? When you start seeing the illusion of things, it's almost like this weird fire alarm goes off in the matrix system. And like if you're trying to escape your role, or you're trying to get into a new role in the false matrix, or you're just trying to leave it all together, it's almost like a fire alarm gets pulled and there's like a ding, 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 ding that happens energetically, right? And so then you can just start feeling like things get really difficult for you. When you decide to like stop following the mass consciousness of things, then things can sometimes feel really difficult for you, right? And so that's why a lot of times people are afraid to leave the false matrix, because they just want to get by, right? They don't want to struggle too much. So it's like, yeah, I really hate my job, or I really hate this relationship, but it's better than maybe it getting worse, right? So they choose to stay. But when you make a bold decision to leave certain roles that were carved out for you, it can be a little difficult. So here are some tips if you feel as though you are a targeted individual that you can do, that you can participate in to have more peace, okay? So the first thing that you want to consider is who is in your circle, right? So that's really important. As you're awakening, like it's very important to understand that a lot of people are not going to see the world as you see it, okay? They are on a literal different frequency. All right. So sometimes when folks awaken and they leave the false matrix and they start seeing the illusion, the first thing folks want to do is tell people about it, right? They want to say like, this is fake, and this is a conspiracy, and all that kind of stuff, right? And this is an illusion. And to be honest, like when you do that, it can scare a lot of people. It jars a lot of people. And also, we live in a very mechanical, mechanized society, right? And so for folks who are literally plugged into the false matrix system, like they're gonna play their role. Just because you decided that you wanna step out of whatever role that was assigned to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody around you is gonna follow suit, okay? If anything, you're gonna immediately be ostracized. And the more you can accept that, the easier it is to create your game plan and to reclaim your consciousness and to reclaim just your peace of mind, okay? So really think about who is in your circle, all right? And are they beneficial for you in this next phase that you're moving into, right? So if you are looking to re-script your life, if you're looking to like really break free from a lot of the societal expectations or a lot of the like intergenerational trauma that you have experienced or your bloodline has experienced, like it's really important to check your circle. So a lot of times we stay in relationships or we stay really close or connected to people out of a sense of obligation. And that can really actually be harmful to your mental health as you're on your awakening journey. Like a lot of the process is you spending a lot of time in reflection. You're not alone, I think a lot of times we have this really codependent patterning in our society where we have this really codependent patterning in our society, which says that we have to be around people, right? We have to be tapped in. And if we're not, then somehow we're not valuable. Somehow we're not worthy, right? If we're not tapped into certain networks and groups, okay? So that has to go, right? It's actually really critical for you to get comfortable with being in your own essence, with figuring out what is your own essence, okay? Sometimes we get so clouded by the noise. We're so caught up in like different group chats. We're so caught up in different social engagements, and we're just going just to go. Sometimes it's like, well, at least I got invited. At least I have friends around, that sort of thing. A lot of that patterning is a form of energy harvesting, right? And it actually keeps us from really being in alignment with what our power and what our potential is, okay? So who is in your circle? If people are in your circle that are making you second guess yourself, that are making you second guess your sanity, and I know a lot of times it can be veiled as, oh, I'm checking in on you, I care about you, are you okay? You know, that sort of thing. But those a lot of times are trigger words in the false matrix to kind of keep you, or to get you to second guess expanding your consciousness, right? So sometimes it's actually just better for your mental health to decline certain social invitations, to stay insular, not in a way of like where you're just binge watching Netflix all day, or you're just binge watching tarot videos all day, or what have you. Not in that way. Now that might be a phase that you go through. We all go through those phases, but I actually mean like tapping into your essence. So maybe if you are choosing to leave certain social circles, right, and that might feel like there's a void there, well, then replace it with some kind of class that you're taking, right? So if you're awakening to your spirituality, your multidimensionality, there's a lot of things to learn. You can master or start the process of mastering your subconscious mind, the unconscious mind. You can learn about meditation. You can learn about mindfulness, yoga. There's so many different things out there that you can tap into that can support you with self-regulation and embodiment, keeping you centered, keeping you grounded, okay? So instead of being caught up in different social circles and being in certain social circles where you're feeling less than, or you're feeling like you're second guessing yourself all the time, really cut out the fluff and replace it with your own spiritual growth and development, right? A lot of folks that I talk to or that I counsel, like they have one foot in the false matrix, and then they have another foot of like, okay, but I want to expand, I want to create my own spiritual business. I get that a lot. A lot of folks who are naturally intuitive, who are here with a really big calling and a really big mission, they want to branch out and they want to create their own thing, but a lot of times the social circles that they're connected to keep them back, hold them back, and actually like cause an energetic drain, okay? So all that time that you are spending in certain social circles, which are not maybe necessarily in alignment with what your new path is, you could be doing a lot of other things, you know? You could be growing and expanding spiritually. And it doesn't mean you have to be like completely a hermit. There's a lot of online groups out there that where you can find people who are resonating with you in more of a like-minded sort of way as well. So there are a lot of different options for that, okay? The next thing you want to think about, okay, so first thing, if you feel like you're a targeted individual, really take stock of who is in your circle right now, okay? The next thing you want to do is think about what karmic storylines are currently playing out within your reality. So a lot of times if you feel as though you are being watched, if you feel as though like a system is out to get you, it's very likely that that has happened in another timeline. It's very likely that that has happened in a past life circumstance, right? So really getting into your Akashic Records, that's something that I work with folks a lot on doing, and I actually am offering one-on-one ascension coaching journeys for folks who are interested. Definitely send me an email. My email is heatherarcherconsulting@gmail.com, heatherarcherconsulting@gmail.com, and then you can learn more about just how to get into your Akashic Records as well. I'm a really big fan of people like learning how to do it themselves, and that's what I support folks with by the content that I produce. So I have some stuff on YouTube at The Goddess Keys to support folks on that journey, and then on top of that, I also have a Patreon where if you are interested in diving into the depths of your unconscious mind, you can do that in guided meditation format, okay? So it's important because you want to see what karmic loops are currently playing out. So you can actually work on canceling those out, right? And transcending those karmic loops. But a lot of times you need to learn and understand what trauma has been triggered as it relates to feeling like a targeted individual. So a lot of times it's a karmic storyline. So I'm going to give you an example. So some folks may have heard about the ancient civilization of Atlantis or the ancient civilization of Lemuria. And Atlantis in particular, I want to talk about because a lot of the trends that we're seeing today also happened in Atlantis. Okay, so the idea around monitoring, the idea around high security sort of stuff in the government or increased surveillance, that sort of thing. A lot of that stuff played out in the Atlantean times. And, even though Atlantis is a civilization that a lot of people may find to be mythical, there's a lot of parallels with Atlantis and this idea around monitoring and surveillance that is actually repeating itself karmically today. And if we don't have memory of that, or recollection of that, then we'll just kind of play out those same karmic loops and timelines. And so if you feel as though you're being monitored or watched or that sort of thing, you want to kind of connect with different karma that may have played out for you in other timelines, realms, and dimensions where you did feel as though you were being ostracized, right? And you want to work on collapsing those timelines so they don't keep repeating. So the way karma works is that it'll keep showing up in your reality until you address and deal with it, all right? So you can heal from it and move on. So the next thing that you want to look at, so on being a targeted individual, so far I've mentioned checking in on who's in your circle, really connect with the energetic resonance of the folks that are in your circle. How do they make you feel, that sort of thing. What karmic storylines are currently playing out as it relates to feeling targeted, to feeling chased, to feeling ostracized, and learning about that so that you can collapse those timelines. The next thing I want to talk about is a topic I've gone into depth about on a few platforms, which is called Etheric Implants. Etheric implants are programs, are electrical programs that a lot of times are running in the DNA of humanity, which can keep us from expanding in consciousness. So if we don't take care of the etheric implant issue, even though it's not something that we talk about a lot in our society, then what will happen is that as we try to expand in consciousness, things will never quite pan out for us, or it'll always feel as though there's this blockage and we're not quite sure why. A lot of times it's because of the way that we're literally wired, okay? So an example that I want to give, like a Hollywood type example that I'll give, I don't know if folks have seen that show Westworld that was on HBO a while ago, and it was about those clones who were a part of this whole like Wild West theme park. And these clones were basically programmed to have certain storylines, and they would get reset, day after day at this theme park. But some of the clones started to basically become self-aware. So even though they felt that their lives were real, they started to realize like, oh, I've had this experience before. Like I feel like my memory is getting wiped, that sort of thing. And so it's a really interesting story around the origin of creation and what does consciousness really look like. And the interesting thing is that a lot of times, the human consciousness has been tampered with a lot of times throughout human history. It has been tampered with. So when we think about the times of Atlantis or Lemuria, or if we think about the times of even like ancient Egypt, we wonder about how certain civilizations were able to be run. Why did consciousness seem to be a little bit higher than it is today? A lot of times it has to do with certain falls in consciousness and the manipulation of human consciousness. So if you are feeling monitored or if you are feeling targeted, something that you might want to invest your time and attention into is etheric implants, right? and the removal of them, and the removal of these programs, right? So you can reclaim your power. And so the next thing I want to say, so on being a targeted individual, so far I've discussed checking in on who's in your circle, checking in on which karmic storylines are currently playing out, and then also checking in on etheric technology or etheric weaponry that could be running within your unconscious mind, right? That could keep you in higher states of fear and consciousness suppression, all right? The next thing you want to look into are soul contracts, okay? So I want you to think about the fact that if you were to go to like a drugstore and purchase a pack of gum, you would get a receipt for it, right? You know, even if this item is super cheap, you would still get this receipt for it. Like usually it's like a long receipt. So I want you to think about this concept of as above, so below. So just like you will get a receipt or some kind of paperwork for like the smallest item that you purchase, at the same time, you will have certain records of certain relationships that you have been contracted to be in, and that is a soul contract, right? So everyone that's in your life right now, from the most seemingly insignificant relationship, maybe it's just like a random coworker that you don't even talk to that often, to somebody where it's like a much more significant relationship, you have a soul contract with, and there's some kind of karma playing out. And karma isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just usually balancing out something that wasn't balanced out in a previous incarnation. However, you might also have soul contracts based upon karma from previous lives to kind of keep you boxed in, right? Or to keep you from expanding. Or maybe you took vows of silence. Maybe you were a healer in a past life and it wasn't cool to be a healer. You know, maybe you know, there's that whole witch trial thing that has gone down a few different times. Maybe you were ostracized for that. And maybe that karmic storyline is playing out. And maybe somewhere in your subconscious mind, you decided to take a vow or an oath of silence, right? And so now you are incarnated at this time and you are seeking to be a healer, or you're seeking to expand in your consciousness. And now you're seeing that these same karmic storylines are playing out, okay? So this is an example of a soul contract that you might want to work on revoking, okay? So soul contracts are vows, oaths, and agreements that we make. Sometimes they're beneficial to us, but a lot of times in the false matrix, they're not very beneficial to us, and they work to keep us suppressed. And this is why a lot of times folks have dreams. I work with a lot of folks like who have a certain dream or vision for their life, but for some reason they just feel immobilized. They feel stagnated. They feel as though they're not able to break free from something. A lot of times it's because there's a literal script that's running that will prevent them from branching out. And so the idea is to reclaim your creator consciousness, right? To reclaim your authority within a system that has tried to take it away, has had you looking outside to anybody else to tell you who to be and how to be, okay? And so working on re-scripting your life, seeing what soul contracts are running can really support you with this issue around feeling like a targeted individual, okay? So that you're able to alchemize that situation. I will say it is a phase. It's a phase that you can, that will be overcome, but it does take a very deep dive into your subconscious mind and to do a cleanup a lot of times of certain karma that's played out in particular past lives or parallel lives even, and to rewrite your story. So start seeing everybody within your reality as being a part of a cast of characters, okay? Just like if you were to watch any movie or show, there's usually a protagonist and then there's usually an antagonist. The same thing's also happening within the third dimension and within any realm and plane of existence, okay? And so if you are feeling targeted, then that's a part of a storyline that you're participating in, okay? And it's maybe there's a little work that needs to be done to get you to alchemize that, but it is certainly possible, and you certainly have the power and the authority to make it so, okay? So this has just been coming up a lot in client sessions this week around feeling targeted, feeling watched, that sort of thing. And once again, I'm not here to gaslight anybody who ends up watching this. I'm just here to provide a perspective, an alchemical perspective, to support you with shifting your reality, all right? And so if you're interested in working with me, then I will leave my contact information below. Sending you so much love, joy, peace, prosperity, and abundance until we meet again. Bye.